Evening. Thank you for tuning in. Tonight is Woke Wednesdays. We do this every single Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Hurston, and I am a second-year doc student at FIU. And tonight we are discussing the Me Too movement, building on last week's episode. So thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Tonight we have a very special episode. Our panelists are absolutely amazing. And see, looking at me. So if you could please, if everyone could please introduce themselves. Who are you? What do you do? Whatever you want to tell the people. Feel free to start wherever. Yeah. So, go. Anyone.
Hi everyone. My name is Jenny Simon. I am a master's student here at FIU. I'm doing my master's in higher education administration, and I'm excited to be here tonight. Thank you, Hurston.
Absolutely.
Hi, my name is Cassandra Bazil. I am a PhD student at University of Miami studying microbiology and immunology. I am from Miami, and I'm excited to be a part of Woke Wednesday.
Oh, wait, where are you from? Yes, where are you from?
I'm from Cuba, but I've been living in Miami, so yeah, I have.
You're from Miami?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
born, raised in Miami.
Alright, cool.
Hi, my name is Clara. I'm from Brazil. I'm still in undergrad. I'm studying sociology and gender studies and philosophy. I've been here for just over a year, so if you hear a little accent, just pretend you didn't hear it.
That's not wrong with
Yeah,
that. That's cool.
I've been here 10, I still have it, so.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is S.C. Finobang. I am Ghanaian American, live in Pembroke Pines. I graduated FIU last year, sociology major, but also organizational comm major. I work as a community organizer and activist, so I basically work with communities and drive campaigns to make their lives better. And I'm happy to be here. So,
Thank you so much for all of y'all, to all of you who just are here. So excited. So last week we talked about the Me Too movement. And y'all, if this is your first time tuning into Woke Wednesdays, please feel free to pose your comments, your questions. If you disagree with what anyone says, please feel free to say that you disagree and why. But if you agree, also feel free to say that. We're trying to create a learning environment here. That's kind of the point of the show, to be educational. So please feel free just to pose your thoughts in the comment section, and I will try my best to read them. So tonight we're talking about the Me Too movement. And I'll kind of talk about last week throughout the show, but so when I say Me Too, what does that mean to y'all? How do y'all understand this in very broadly? So the audience, what do y'all think about the Me Too movement? And then our panelists, what do y'all think? Popcorn style, whoever wants to go.
I want to do it.
All right, Essie.
Everyone's looking at me.
Anyone, go ahead.
I mean, if you want to give background, Me Too movement was a kind of like a social hashtag that was created by Tarana Burke.
Mm-hmm.
Tarana Burke. It was not associated with the what's his name? His name was Henry or
Harvey Weinstein?
Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
It previously wasn't associated with Harvey Weinstein. It was initially her hashtag that she used for a campaign, Empowerment Through Empathy, which would help women who were victims of sexual assault. Mostly, it was mainly for low-income or black and brown women to be empowered to tell their stories about sexual assault due to her personal experience with a 13-year-old girl who was a victim of sexual assault, and she didn't know how to respond, so she kind of wished she said Me Too, so that's where it came from. Mm-hmm. And then it became a movement through the Harvey Weinstein case, where allegations of like sexual assault. He's like director, film producer,
yeah.
and there was a bunch of allegations around with him in sexual assault. So that's how it came out, and people decided to. I think it was Alyssa Milan who prompted folks to use the hashtag to tell their stories, so it kind of blew up. And since then, it's been a movement across different races and backgrounds, and it's been like spin-offs of different things like Church Too and just other things connected. So for me, I just saw it as the movement. Like when I was on Facebook, everyone was saying Me Too, and then at work everyone was like, did you hear about Me Too story and everything? And I was like, that's why everyone's been saying Me Too. And then at my job, I worked at Miami Worker Center, which is like a gender justice organization. So we had folks that came in, and we had our members tell their stories about sexual assault, and there were some really real stories, and elevate the voices of like low income Black and brown women, and that's kind of when I kind of got deep into the Me Too movement as well. So that's me.
Awesome.
Good job, yeah.
Well, I can talk about it. Similarly, it was through Facebook, social media mainly, that I sort of first heard about the movement, and I didn't know about how it started. So it took some looking back and seeing, figuring out when the hashtag was used the first time, and like that it originated within communities of color, which I think is an important thing to notice, because something that I've been trying to grapple with the movement is it's a little bothersome that it only got to this point after the case of after Hollywood got involved. And I think it's important that these voices are being heard, that the actresses and these people in positions of power can speak up. But I kind of wish that it could have been listened to and followed the same way when women who are not in positions of power were speaking up about this. But I mean, at least it's in front pages. At least we're talking about it, and I think more personally, in conversation with my friends and in the classroom, we've all found instances of sexual harassment, and we all know people who've been sexually assaulted, and so it's such an important conversation to be had. So I'm glad that's happening. And I'm glad that I can even bring it up at the dinner table with people that I know they're dear to my heart, but they're not so open about these issues necessarily.
Absolutely. And just piggyback off what you just said, I'm really glad this conversation is being had. It's something that has taken several years to come into the spotlight, but again, it's something that should have been discussed way before Hollywood got to it, and before they kind of publicized it in a way to their advantage. And it's something that should have started when it started with you said Tarana Burke.
Mm-hmm.
When she started it, and talking about somebody of a lower income, a Black woman most likely, and it just shows that with movements such as Me Too, it takes people, mostly white people of power, to put it in the spotlight. And I just feel that a lot of people, there is some like back and forth with it when it comes to Me Too movement, like like antagonist of it when it comes to people like, oh well, there's some victim blaming involved, and that is something that's terrible. And of course, everyone says you should hear both sides of the story, like the victim and the offender. But it's a conversation that needs to be had, and I'm glad it's happening.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you pointed out about victim blaming, because that is something that I have suffered when I came forward with the Me Too hashtag. And I think one of the things we have to learn to deal with is that victim blaming it doesn't necessarily come from outside, but it can come from people very, very close to you, like your family, your significant other, your parents. And it was the case with me and my mother. As soon as I published the hashtag Me Too, and I actually told the story of what happened to me, she messaged me. My mom is in Brazil, obviously. She messaged me, and she was angry about it. She was like, why didn't you tell me this before? Like, I was supposed to be, the person, to whom you tell everything, whom you trust the most. And I was like, well, maybe you should understand that the reason why I didn't tell you is because I knew you would react like this. And what happened at the end of the story is that she blamed me because of the clothes I was wearing on that day, which just reinforced my point. So I think we need to understand that victim blaming is something very serious and shouldn't be underestimated. And we need to learn how to deal with when it comes from someone next to us.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Anyway, okay.
Yeah, and just to talk about what you just said, like when people say, "Oh, why didn't you tell me?" and why didn't you like voice it sooner or something? There's a level of shame that comes with being a victim of anything, and Me Too is making that shame kind of become normalized in the sense that it's not only you that's experiencing that. It's everyone. It's most people. So hopefully victim blaming becomes something, I guess, something to a lesser extent, because hopefully victims speak out sooner, more openly, more freely, and less shamefully about what they're going through.
Yeah, but it's also understanding that before this movement, when someone spoke up, there were consequences. They weren't trusted. If that's why we talk about sexual assault on campus and why so many students don't say anything, because the very few cases that you hear of, then the student ends up even just leaving the school, and the actual perpetrator is just like walking around the school like nothing happened. And so you're not providing any kind of empowerment or any kind of reassurance to this other person who suffered sexual assault that they would have a different experience. So why would you expect them to feel like they can come across and say what happened to them? So I think that that's something good that has come out of this, is that people feel that they can say something, and still victim blaming happens.
Yeah.
But it's a different story now.
Yeah.
The way in which people are thinking about it is differently.
I think just to kind of piggyback a little bit on what you guys kind of touched on about kind of like the intersection of race, I would say Me Too kind of illustrated power. I mean, going back to the empowerment through empathy, I think that women are socialized to be silent and we're muted. So in our everyday lives and our everyday experiences, we are not taught to speak up about anything. In fact, we are taught to apologize. More so of anything, we're taught to even victim blame ourselves. We internalize it, and we internalize it with other women. We're just taught that we're the blame. So we're just taught to think of ourselves small and just be small. So we're not taught to say anything in general. And then if you intersect race in there, and I think which is really important, of why what you mentioned, that I think that it was really good that it became a movement, but there was some co-opting that did happen. And even previously, when like people were like, yeah, because of what's her name that always makes songs, Taylor Swift. So like Taylor Swift, and people are like, yeah, Taylor Swift is such an activist because she did this, and it's like, yeah, it's great, sis, but like you did not do that. And it kind of just, and it's like, yeah, it's good, sis, but so it's like there is kind of like that not cycle, but it is a thing where like spaces get co-opted, and I'm glad that it became a space where all women can tell their stories, but also think about how the stories of women of color, especially low-income women of color, that are kind of left in the margins too in these stories, because there's actually a threat of like more silence when it comes to expressing and talking about sexual assault. So like if you're someone who is low income or has a low wage job, or is someone of color or whatever, like the chances of you speaking up is less likely, because you definitely cannot forget retaliation. Like you cannot lose your job. Like you cannot, there's just so much more things that are at stake. And then there's also other racial narratives that kind of play a role in, if you do speak up, that will kind of like affect your experience as well. So I think that part of what you're saying is right too, but it's also interesting that like, it is, I mean, the case, like the Harvey Weinstein case was kind of like a big factor in like kind of elevating the hashtag, but like women of like low income women of color were also like a little bit to the margins too in their stories as well. And even since it's considering the fact that it's also like a online social hashtag, many people are not really going to be on social media too, who have experienced or have accessibility to technology to tell their stories, who have experienced this trauma. So.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to add something, because you've mentioned several times like empowerment through empathy, and whose stories receive that empathy too matters. Because I remember the case with the coach that abuse of the number of the
You mean FIU?
The Olympic coach.
no, the Olympic coach
Oh, yeah.
with all these gymnasts. Yeah, and so I could see how so many people were outraged because this man did this, but there was such an emphasis on them being athletes, and how many other young women of color have been abused and they didn't receive that kind of empathy. And then we had the questions of, oh, was it late at night? Was she drinking? Like, what else? What other explanation can we find to justify what happened? And so, yeah, I absolutely agree that the treatment of the stories varies depending on race, class, and
Yeah, and even profession. I mean, like, you had Cardi B who spoke up a couple weeks ago about, like, what about the strippers and sex workers and things of that nature who speak out all the time, who have a bazillion police reports on this. You know, this prostitute being beat up and thrown in a dumpster, but it's just like they're not valued the same way as even somebody who is of low income, because they have, like, you know, a high risk job or a job that's not deemed appropriate to the masses or to men. So it's something that it's really it's just up in the air to who receives the empathy. It's you have to be a normal American cisgendered person who works in, you know, who is in a high profile job, who has the authority to speak out for themselves, and it's unfortunate.
Real quick, you want to read this comment from Carola?
Unfortunately, being a woman is difficult in all societal. I cannot imagine how it is to be a black woman, but I think we are stronger. Saludos, beautiful ladies.
Just tuning in from Chile.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Miss AK85.
I think it's very sad when "Why didn't you tell me" is heard before "Are you okay?" Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Is there anything I could do
Yes.
for you? I could understand how hearing "Why didn't you tell me" doesn't console a victim. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So true.
Yeah.
And I think it's very interesting that we're talking about how sexual violence affects, like, black women disproportionately, and also the attention that is given to the victims is also disproportionate. I feel like two elements that always are missing from the conversation. One, Native American women.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Native American
Indigenous
women.
women.
Yeah, I was actually looking up some statistics before I came here, and it says that Native Americans are at the greatest risk of sexual violence, because American Indians are twice as likely to experience rape or sexual assault compared to all other races, and the chances of a Native American woman of them being raped is 1 in 30. So that's just crazy, and I think it really puts a finger on the intersection of patriarchy and capitalism and imperialism and colonialism and all these systems of domination, because they are not separate from each other, and that's what we need to understand. When stories of, you know, poor women don't make the headlines and in front covers, it tells us something about how our society is organized in the basis of class. And so we cannot detach these things, right? And I think feminist research has really paid a little attention to social class in that sense. We're always talking about, you know, all these things pertaining to identity, which are super important, but social class cannot be left out of the conversation, because poverty really increases people's vulnerability to violence, sex trafficking, sexual exploitation, and all kinds of violence.
And really quick though, does anyone in the who's viewing need us to kind of like dissect the terms that we're throwing around, because there's a lot of heavy terms? So do we need to, like, capitalism, imperialism, all those things? Do we need to kind of dissect those terms?
Thank you so much for saying that. But also,
you're getting hearts and hand claps right now.
but something else. Thank you for looking up those. I didn't know the statistics, but also it made me think of undocumented women and how they're done. There's not a chance that they're gonna partake on this, because it's not only I will lose my job, but it's like, am I gonna get deported?
The
Like,
coyote.
Yeah, like exactly.
Yeah.
And even that's a good point, Harrison. Yeah, the experience here, but the experience trying to get here, and the vulnerability throughout. I mean, throughout their entire lives.
Yeah.
Coyote, real quick, is what usually happens south of the border when people pay to have someone bring them across the border to the United States. Oftentimes, women are not only is their money taken, but oftentimes are raped in order for them to cross the border.
Absolutely.
And so, please.
No, I was gonna say that there's one thing that bothers me a little bit about our discourse on sexual violence, which is the way we fragment violence, saying it like, oh, okay, so this is groping, that's like kind of, not so bad, and then there's like this other level, which is like sexual harassment, and then there is like sexual assault, but rape is not sexual assault because there wasn't penetration, and then there's rape, and then there's murder,
Yeah.
So I think one bad effect that this has on victims of violence is because some of them don't feel like what they have undergone is enough for them.
Serious enough.
Exactly. It happened to me when we were talking about, the Me Too movement. I was sexually harassed, but I wasn't raped. So I was like, do I even deserve to be heard? Do I even deserve to like post something, say something about it? Like, is it even relevant, And I think we can't fragment violence because it's all part of one big system.
I mean, if we're going to go there, we're going to have that conversation, then that means that we have to have a conversation about, we first have to kind of define it, because I think that one of the big problems is that we live in a culture that we live in a culture that doesn't, I guess, welcome consent or even have a clear understanding of what that is. And hell, we don't have a clear understanding of what that is because we have been socialized into believing certain things about men and women and about sex and about interactions with men and women. So there isn't a clear definitions of what consent is, and then also what sexual violence looks like and what it is. And a lot of times when explaining these things, I get guys that say, oh, you're doing too much, you're doing the most, you're doing this and that. But I'm like, nah, bro, like, I'm not doing the most. Like, consent is not something that has to be expressed verbally. Consent is something that's non-verbally. Consent is body language. Consent, there's a lot of things that define that what is consent. And there's so many ways to ask for consent. And even the culture of even implying consent, we have this idea that it's like lame, like, oh, why would you ask? But there's just so many ways to do that. And one of the issues here, and I guess that kind of piggybacks on what you said, is that we don't see the small everyday interactions because we're in like a rape culture. We don't see how some interactions are problematic and can be defined as assault, And in some cases, some folks don't even know and they're committing it, but it's like we have to have these conversations for us to prevent these things. So like those interactions, I think there was like a group chat where we're having a conversation about like assault, and I was like, yeah, like assault happens every single day around y'all, especially here on this campus. It's ironic that we're here at FIU, but it happens so often. How many of you guys in the month of April, every single time you go into the GC lawns, you see those flags and you see more and more and more because it happens so often. And even something as little as being at a party and like literally walking out of a party and guys grabbing your arm or like, guys grabbing your arm, you saying no, guys throwing slurs at you because you don't want to give them a time of the day, or even those small experiences as a woman where like you have to pretend to give your number because you're afraid of getting harmed, or like you don't know what's, we take those for granted, but those are like small and real scenarios of what sexual assault, like what that is. And like violence doesn't have to be explicit. It could definitely be implicit as well. And those, in that scenario, that could still be a situation of violence. And I had to explain to someone that, like, you don't know that feeling because you're a man. But as a woman, like, there's always the argument is like, well, you could have just said no. But how do you throw that at women when every day women say no with their mouths and with their body and you don't listen? Yeah. Like, women say no every day, but y'all don't listen. But then when something happens, it's like you could have said no. Or we're expected to be these sumo warriors. Like, no means no. But it's like, fam, like, when I say no, you're not listening to me. But also, like, think about this. Like, think about the situation where I'm at a party, I'm by myself, and dude is big, and I say no, and he grabs my arm. I say that situation can turn, like, how many black women, the statistics against black women and how often black women are killed? Mm-hmm. The statistics of domestic, like, so much how black women are harmed? Like, I think, like, when was it? Was it like 2 years ago or a year ago where a woman said no to dancing to this guy and she was shot? Black woman.
Oh yes,
last
yes,
year.
yes,
That was
yeah,
last
yeah.
year. So these are these situations can escalate. And they're very violent, but like we've been conditioned in this violence and we've been conditioned to normalize these things. But these are all instances of like sexual violence. Like these are all situations that can escalate at any point.
Not to mention police officers.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Real quick, so I said I was going to reference last week.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important. Real quick, would you like to read this one? It's AK85.
It says, grabbing is simultaneously asking, can I talk to you, but not understand that touching you may be unwanted.
And that requires consent.
Yeah.
Consent. You can't just touch people and think that you have that requires is consent.
So last week, some of the things that were said. So number one, some of the guys articulated that women aren't the only ones that are survivors of sexual assault.
Mhm.
Men are also survivors of sexual assault, which I think that's a good point.
Yes.
The one thing that was said is that it is innate for men to pursue women, right? It was.
No.
So
Okay, let
right, so I'm just kind of
Let it
saying, and
finish.
then please feel free to attack it, dissect it, deconstruct it, whatever. It is innate for men to pursue women, even when they say no. Does that really mean no? Sometimes they like it when we continue, and they give examples. They're like, "Hey, I've had sometimes where a woman says no, I just kind of try a little bit more, and then she says yes." I'm not specifically talking about sex. It could be just kind of talking to a woman. It could be multiple things. They're like, we have to pursue women, and we all. But one of their main points was that this is innate in us to do so. So please feel free to just jump all over that.
No, I can. Yeah.
Who wants it first?
Invading someone's space at any situation is not called pursuing. That's assault. Don't
Yeah.
touch me. And another thing is, like, we're not talking about, like, I don't know, but hey, can I take you out? Hey, I want to talk to you. Hey, it's more of like, yo, ma, you sexy. It's a more aggressive and more sexualized meaning to what we're talking about with Me Too, and it's way deeper than just trying to court or date a woman and she eventually says yes because she wants to get to know you. It's different.
Yeah, and it's not. There's a difference between innate and learned behavior. I don't think men are born with this innate need trait to pursue women. I think they learned and they're socialized to do that, and I think they receive a lot of positive or affirmation that it's okay for them to do that. And so when they go and they grab you and they touch you and they insist, then they think everybody's doing it. And they go and talk to their friends and their friends are doing it. And then eventually, like in the case you were saying, maybe you will give him your phone number because you are afraid. And then in his mind he's thinking, oh, I just insisted until she actually wanted it. She just wanted me to pursue her. And so
it's out of fear, yeah. It's out of...
I just want to say something else that was said last week, and please. One thing that they said when that rebuttal was kind of brought up, what you said too, is that that you have to continue to pursue. God, these said again. God, I just missed it. Yeah, it escaped. What else?
until
It's
she.
never happens.
Well, okay,
It's
fine.
but that you have to continue to pursue.
This is
This is what it was. They're like, well, in my culture, where I'm from, in Latin America, the Caribbean, women are used to men being aggressive. So sometimes you just gotta be aggressive. And one of the guys brought up, he's like, he's like, if you're at a party, you should ask a woman to dance with you. And they're like, nah, that's not sexy, that's not cool. A woman, and they named experiences. They're like, women have looked at me as like, I'm a punk, I'm a sissy, whatever, for even asking. And then my man said, he's like, one time I asked a woman to dance with me at a soap party. Not extremely, but immediately he was emasculated in that particular moment. I don't know if emasculated is the right word. Where they were like, what? You asked her to dance with you at a soca party? What's wrong with you? Like, you're not supposed to do that at a soca party. So, just interested in thoughts, like, just interested, like, what do you think about that, about what I just said?
Yeah, I want to kind of just deconstruct some things and just kind of just build.
Please.
So I first want to start by defining the system of patriarchy. And patriarchy is a system where it describes a system that are ruled by men, but that's not the only thing about patriarchy. That's what we kind of like gloss over. But the real thing about patriarchy is that it is a system that hierarchs men over women, no, masculinity over femininity, right? And it also kind of dichotomizes it as well. So to just kind of bring it back, so you have, it creates this binary of of feminine and masculine, where masculine is at the top. Wait.
I'm sorry. When in doubt, blame the whites.
But so yeah, patriarchy creates this system of dichotomy, where men are at the top and women are at the bottom, and it kind of has these categories, or what we can call scripts, for what it is to perform femininity or to be feminine, and what it is to perform masculinity. And it's also a system that is also, let's say, cis and hetero. So like it believes that like sex is.
What do you mean by cis?
That's what I'm saying. It believes that sex is connected to gender. So like sex is like your physical biology, autonomy, like, you know, vagina, boobs. Gender is who you are socially. Like, so like gender would be the fact that like as a woman, I feel like I want to wear a dress and this and that. Like it kind of is your social presentation. So like it's this system that scripts like what is feminine, what is masculine, and it's usually women, like boobs, vagina, whatever, feminine, men, penis, whatever, are masculine, right? And there's certain things that go in these categories, right? So there is, for feminine, there's a certain type of physical attributes for what is feminine, hips, this, that. There's certain characteristics that describe what is feminine as a man. There's certain physical attributes as what is masculine. You know, muscles, chest, this and that, for the most part. And then you also have certain characteristics, you know? It's true though, like, then you have certain characteristics of what is masculine, what is feminine. And, you know, some of the characteristics may be like short hair, long hair, whatever, feminine, whatever. But to get down to the deep of what this conversation is, like, we've been socialized that feminine and like women are irrational, emotional. And when we say emotional, we're talking about negatively. We're talking about in terms of irrationally, like we're so emotional that we don't have the ability. We're hysterical. Yes. And we don't have the ability to make decisions. You know, we're small, we're weak, we're fragile, we're like damsel in distresses. We're irrational in terms of we don't really know what we want. You know what I'm saying? We're these things that like to be looked at, to be physically attractive, to be pretty. We're these things for men to prey on. And then for masculine and men, aggression, anger, violence, dominance, leader. We associate leadership and just other traits, more assertive like traits for men. So these ideas that men are innately supposed to prey on women has been socialized, and they're not innate. It's something that men are taught. Men are taught to be these predators, and we're taught to be like these little damsels that get chased, that's prey. And it's really important to understand that even though masculinity is up here and femininity is up here, like both of us are getting screwed, because it kind of puts things that actually affect us as humans in certain categories, you know? So for instance, like to be able to cry, you know, is considered more feminine, and regardless of whether you're a man or woman, you cry. So men often don't cry and suffer from mental illness and everything else because it's not masculine. It's not masculine to cry, right? And then certain things such as like, you know, they're just seen as like, because it's not assertive, because it's not aggressive, it is feminine, not masculine, right? So even in these situations that we described here, you know, it hinders from certain things to take place because we have these ideas of what is masculine, what is feminine. And it's really important to understand that men and women are not taught separately, they're taught together. So in order for a system to maintain itself, in order for, you know, a group of people to rule over someone, they also have to buy in. They have to buy into it for the system to maintain. So both men and women, right, perpetuate this system. And so you're also going to have instances where women have internalized these things and may perpetuate certain things as far as, you asked me, nigga, you pussy as fuck. Like, you don't ask shit. You're supposed to sit there and be a man, whatever that means. You know what I'm saying? So in this case, it's very important to understand how, if we can kind of get our minds wrapped around these things, we will understand and we'll be able to navigate the issue better and understand why men should be alongside fighting with us and understand how patriarchy and all these things are problematic, right, in these arguments. So I think men need to be aware of that dialogue and that language that says they are predators, because you guys are not animals, you're human beings. And it kind of scripts you guys as these animals that don't have the ability of thinking and don't have the ability of rationality, and you guys do. You're not prey. You know what I'm saying? And also, it's very important to watch out for your language when you talk about aggressive in this, because if you're going to argue and say that men are also victims of sexual assault, which they are, right? But the problem, right, that's the system works against you because you can't really speak about it because men are not supposed to be victims. Exactly. Men can't be victims. To have someone dominate you, you know what I'm saying? We're supposed to be the ones that dominate. So the idea of being dominated and being a victim is not very masculine. So that's why you don't hear much men talking about it, right? Which is why the Me Too movement, and which is why you need to stand behind women. You know? And I think that kind of answers most of the conversations here, is that this whole idea when we talk about consent, that, you know, women have internalized not having they're not allowed to be assertive. So even in situations with men, especially sexual situations, there's so many times where women are very uncomfortable, but they're taught that if they're vocal and they speak out, that they're ruining the mood. You know, they're allowed to be small. Don't speak out too much. Don't make it too difficult. We're taught to be small, and we're taught not to be vocal. So we just kind of like, I guess so. But like literally at the first no, when someone's like, no, you need to say no, even if, because sometimes women are like in their heads bargaining, like, we're not taught to I guess, value our own voice. Like, we're not taught to trust our own judgment. We're not really taught that. So, like, even if a woman says no and eventually says yes, 9 times out of 10, she said no and she really meant no, but she said yes because she's been persuaded enough and she's been negotiating in her head, like, damn, am I making this awkward? Damn, he won't like me. I really do like him. I just don't want to have sex with him. I just don't want to do that. But, like, he's going to think this of me. So, damn, let me just say yes to this even though I don't want to do it. And that's what happens. Or you have women who have internalized the whole idea that, like, you know, let me be playful on this and that. And let's be clear, there's a difference. You can still flirt. This whole conversation doesn't mean that you can't flirt. But the problem is that, like, flirting also involves emotional intelligence and nonverbals. And like when we said earlier, consent is just not verbal, it's also nonverbal. So when you're flirting with someone, you're paying attention to their nonverbals. You're paying attention to the things to show that they're still interested. You're still consenting when you're flirting. You're smiling, you're seeing if they smile back. You're doing something, you see if they're doing something back. So it's not a matter of, if it's flirting or not. It's also a matter of, like, it's consent involved. Sorry.
So no need to apologize.
Wait, sorry, I didn't mean to apologize, and I'm saying sorry again.
No, but what you said was, there's a lot to what you said.
Yeah.
So I want the audience members to also, let's deconstruct a little bit of what you said.
Yeah.
So I saw some kind of head nods and kind of like non-verbal language going on. Real quick, if we can read some of these comments.
Okay.
Let's see here. Where do we start? Alright, you haven't read anything.
Am I reading?
So men are not
Men are not dominant, aggressive, or strong.
I asked, what do you mean?
And then, if you say or think women are irrational, emotional, small, or indecisive, then you're a bigot.
Sure.
Yeah, good.
Kosher Woodlands?
it's a disservice to men, the machismo that doesn't allow them to be aware of their emotions and being able to openly express it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Black men are typically categorized as predators more than anyone else.
That's because you're interested in race, yeah.
Absolutely. We can talk about that. Yes, girl, the oppression of women is also a men's issue.
Alright, I'm passing around a little bit.
Yeah.
You wanna read this one?
Feminism is for Everyone by Bell Hooks is good short read. Black men are, gosh, this guy. Black men are almost never the predators. People only think that because of media. The negatives surrounding masculinity are more attributed to black men and are taught as such.
Yay, babe. Off to our classmate.
Okay, she gave thumbs up. Expand. What is that?
They were asking him to
okay.
expand real quick.
On which part? Okay, black men have not been illustrated as predators. Is that what you said?
It's a question.
Are you? Is that a question to me or a question
No,
to
it's
I think
Tanya?
it's a question
She was most
among themselves, right?
among
Oh,
the
okay,
members.
cool,
Yeah, yeah.
right.
Oh,
So I saw you give me some bilingual stuff.
Of course they have.
I saw
Yeah.
that too. So
Yeah,
please feel free.
No.
Yeah.
Please feel free. So Essie said a lot of good things in there.
Yeah.
One, I think there were one thing that I didn't fully get, but just please, someone.
Because there was a lot to it.
Yeah.
She says, I'm trying to figure out some of the things that I wanted to mention.
So as they're thinking, I'm gonna ask. So you pointed out patriarchy, gender performance, sexual assault, hegemony. God, you said a lot.
I didn't want to say the word.
No,
so I was trying to.
but it was so good. It was so good, and I think this is one of those times where I post every episode on on YouTube. I share it on the Woke Wednesdays Instagram page, story, and then also on YouTube. So I think what Essie said is really good, and what everyone is saying is really good. Just kind of rewatch it and rethink about what they're saying, because by no means what we're talking about they're not simple things. These are very complex, difficult things to grasp, and I think everyone on this panel has spent hours and days and weeks and years thinking about, experiencing, reading about, just kind of putting it out there. So these are not simple things. That's one of my points.
And nor do we expect people to watch this and just have a change of heart immediately this second. I think it's more of pointing out our everyday experiences and like our understanding of these issues, and then having or providing an opportunity for each of you to try to grapple with these topics because they're difficult, and because, as you said, we've been trained to think this way. And I couldn't agree more on the people here are supporting the system, and so somebody has to be buying into it for it to exist. And as women, we do that. And I think someone was making the comment about machismo doesn't serve Latino men, and that is true. But at the same time, if you are trained to behave a certain way since you are 2 years old, then it's going to take some time to unlearn those behaviors. And I think that's what we're trying to do. That's what it comes
Maybe
down
it's
to.
since birth, right? Your birth certificate requires that you put a gender on it, right? So maybe since birth,
I think we were talking about this earlier, that we get to college and we're surprised of hearing people like making these statements and being racist and so on, but that's what they're learning in elementary school. That's what's happening when they're 2 or 3 years old, and when you're telling, I have a small child, and when people are saying, oh, like, you should buy all this pink, cute little stuff, and so right then and there, you're starting to form their identity and their understanding of the world since they're so little. So expecting them to get to college and from one day to another, completely.
It's true. I have so much to say about this. So getting into grad school, I had to pick a lab, right? And that's the first thing to getting a PhD. I'm a PhD student at the University of Miami. I study immunology with a focus on vaccine development and autoimmune disease. I'm a third-year student.
Lupus.
So I study lupus. Yeah, that's exactly. Lupus and Sjogren's. Okay.
She has that too.
Oh, really?
No, we got
they're very interchangeable.
Yeah.
So starting grad school, I have to like rotate in people's labs, and most of the people who have these labs are men. There's one woman professor in my whole department, and she's seen as like some crazy lady, which I'm just like, she's not. She's just confident, and when she said something, she means it. She's not to be taken lightly. So when I joined my lab, my boss, the first thing he told me was like, "You're the first black female student I've ever had," and he's like, "And to be that, you're gonna have to be a little more domineering. You're gonna have to be a little more confident because people are going to look at you a certain way." He's like, people are not going to want to hear what you have to say. People are not going to always believe what you have to say, but you have to know what you're saying and kind of stand by it and not waver. So that's a conversation that was given to me early in my PhD, and I feel that he is what we call woke. Like, he understands patriarchy. He understands why being a woman of color it presents challenges, and I feel as though if we can all agree that these things exist, that they are present in everyone's life, then we can all progress towards a better path. But it takes admitting it and, I guess, acknowledgement of what the problem is.
And I think that I think the comments, just to address some of the comments that came up and to touch up on what you said, yes, this thing is definitely intersected with race. And there's different experiences that come at the intersections, like patriarchy, race, like white supremacy, and all these other things. They're like really heavy things, but they're complex, but they all kind of like create different experiences. So yeah, there's different narratives that come with those different things. I do agree with what you're saying. These are definitely socialized and learned behaviors and learned concepts and learned thoughts and learned ways of just thinking and just interacting. So there's a lot of deconditioning and kind of like de-socializing that needs to happen. And it's not something that happens overnight. Even in the social justice movement, you have folks that are problematic as hell, and everyone's problematic because we are every day constantly, like, white supremacy, patriarchy is not over. We're still living underneath it. So as long as it still maintains, we're going to forever be problematic. The only difference is that we're more cognizant and aware and conscious. I guess you can say woke. I hate the word. But like, we're more woke and we're more conscious about it. So and being conscious and being more cognizant of it every single day, we're basically have a critical eye to every single thing that we do, that we see, that we think, and that helps us kind of chip away at the system each and every day. So that's the only difference. So whether you're first hearing this stuff for the first time, you heard it 20 years ago, you're both still problematic probably, because we're always going to be problematic. I'm just saying, because there's sometimes people get egotistic and they be like, oh, I'm so woke, I know this and that, I know everything about patriarchy from A through Z, but like, you are, you still got patriarchal ideas, like, you know what I'm saying? You're a feminist, but you still conceptualize certain things within patriarchy, and that's okay, but you just need to be aware of it and continue to kind of.
It's not okay.
It's not okay.
But,
it's okay that like you're still struggling, because we're all going to constantly keep struggling because the system's still here. So it's a every day you wake up, you have to constantly be. It's just having a critical eye and being able to confront the things that you see, the things that you do, and the way that you think every day. And the whole conversation of consent has to be a conversation that we deconstruct and we talk about together. Because like I said, women are taught about consent, men are taught together certain things. So like, we have to have those conversations that like, asking is okay, and there's a way to ask. There's a way to be like, oh, do you like when I do that? Do you like when I do this?
I have a question. I have to ask this. I want to hear it. So one thing that was said last week was that I think we lightly touched upon it earlier, how you're at a party, right? Liquor is involved, because we want to make this very real.
Yeah.
Liquor is involved. People have been drinking, people have been dancing, people have a good time, right? Because you were saying something earlier that you always got to ask, or that the nonverbals are sometimes a way of displaying that I'm not interested.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can commit to that idea, because it's so.
It's not binary.
It's so
it's not that
contextual.
binary.
So contextual, so cultural, right? And one thing they were saying was that. I've been doing this today. I'm getting old. You know where I was going with this.
Yeah, I think as a.
Oh yes, I remember. Okay, that it kills the mood.
Yeah,
it kills the mood. So and they were from last week what we were talking about specifically. Once you get to the bedroom to ask, they were saying, and one thing they were saying that, and one thing we brought up was like, yeah, it might not. Some were saying that, well, to one person it might not. To other people they might. And these are things.
Why you niggas acting like y'all don't be like you like that?
So these are things.
Why y'all acting like y'all don't do it?
The girls gonna be like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Just because you
asked.
asked?
Just because you asked. Come on.
No, but
I understand the dancing thing though.
Yeah.
The whole thing, like, oh, I asked her if she wanted to dance at Ahsoka, and she was just like, why are you asking me? I feel like there is cultural influences in that. I mean, I'm Haitian. If I go to Ahsoka and I'm dancing, you don't have to ask me, do you want to dance? I mean, I just feel like we can dance. I mean, but everyone's different. Everyone's different when it comes to that. But as the whole point that you made, like in the bedroom, if you're asking for consent, it's not going to kill the mood.
Real quick, so it is consent, but maybe the wording wasn't there. It's not a, do you consent to have sex? Now there are apps where you can have someone. One of my boys is telling me that there's an app where you ask and they can sign.
I'm just nervous.
I appreciate you in so many ways right now.
Yeah, I'm like,
I put it on the iPad.
Yeah. And he's just talking, and you know that thing too.
So they
I appreciate you so many ways. There are apps. One of my boys told me that there are apps. I'm from North Carolina. I was in North Carolina. We're talking about this. Two things, real quick. I don't want to talk about it. One thing is that there are apps now where you have a person sign right before you have sex, and you consent that, or you're agreeing that this is consent. Please sign the app, right?
That's so problematic.
Because in North Carolina. North Carolina is a deplorable state for so many reasons, right? I was raised there, horrible place. Last year, it went up to the state Supreme Court that once a woman consents, I'm not talking about written consent, just verbal, right? She cannot go back on it. So it can never be considered. It can never be considered rape. It will always be considered consensual sex in North Carolina, right? It will always be up until the 1990s, 1993, I think in most states a husband could legally rape his wife. Yeah. Right? So in North Carolina last year, so as long as she verbally says that she consented, it's consent. And there's nothing she can't do anything to go back on it. Or him, them, their persons.
Yeah, I was gonna touch upon that because I think one thing that we can add to this conversation is that consent is not a multiple choice test. It's not a yes or no. Consent is a process. So you can consent to something, and then in the next moment you're not comfortable with it, you can withdraw consent. You can always withdraw consent. And that could be, within one sexual encounter or several just because you consent to something today doesn't mean that you have to consent to the same thing tomorrow. Consent, and the problem with these apps or whatever that you told me, it's so fucked up because the app doesn't record your withdrawal, right?
Exactly.
So you can even use that to blame a victim.
Absolutely.
That's
yes.
exactly what
that's what it's
for.
Yeah,
I'm sure this was
for the person's
exactly, and it can be used as a legal
protection.
weapon, which just reinforces the idea that the state and the judicial system, it is the state apparatus, right? The courts, the police, everything that pertains to the state apparatus. It is a capitalist institution, but it's also a masculine institution. It works for the purpose of the dominant class, but it also works for the purpose of men. And it's crazy the statistics of sexual assaults that have been reported, and like there was no follow up. Nothing happened. I believe that it's between 97 to 99% of perpetrators of sexual assault have not been incarcerated. And so I'm not defending incarceration from a point of view of the prison industrial system. That's a totally different conversation. We're talking about how women are not taken seriously, and how the state apparatus and the judicial system does not hear women.
Real quick, I saw a statistic earlier. I shared a video on Facebook where it said most women who are incarcerated it is due to them defending themselves regarding sexual assault or
Yes,
sexual
true,
violence.
true,
Yeah.
especially women of color.
Same thing with domestic violence. People love, they love to cite the statistic of, domestic violence is 50-50. Or women, batter men as much as, the other way around. It's not true. Women react to domestic violence.
Exactly.
And men start it. So you can't just, it's a total false comparison.
Does Me Too cover domestic violence? Does it
should.
include
So.
domestic violence? I feel like I hear most of it pertains to sexual assault and
So I love that question because I'm going to say something that happened last week.
Yeah.
Tell her earlier, where there was a man. He said he was from where he's from. He said in West Africa. He's a soccer player. He's not used to men slapping them other men on their behind as like a congratulatory thing. Hey, good goal, good pass, whatever. When he came to the United States, he was playing on a soccer team, and someone slapped him on his ass, and he was questioning. He said, "Hey, would this be considered a type of Me Too? Because I did not feel comfortable with this." To the point where he quit the team. He said, and I think it gets back to what you're saying. What do y'all think?
So I'm just gonna keep it 100.
Go ahead.
All
Please.
right. So
Always,
first and
always.
foremost, let's be really clear. And what's Me Too was for. Let's be really clear about spacing. That is sexual assault. But what we're not going to do is just co-opt this space that was designed for women to speak up because women are muted in society and cannot speak up against violence. So men are also victims of sexual assault, but let's not confuse the Me Too movement. The Me Too movement is a safe space for women to feel empowered by the voices of other and stories of other women because every day we're not.
Yeah.
So if you are a man and you're a victim of sexual assault, that is really great, but please do not co-opt the Me Too space. Especially being someone of privilege. Yeah, I'm not like you. I'm just saying in general because the guys from the last episode have said, "Oh yeah, but what about me?" But like that's somewhat white people be doing that shit. Calm down. Don't all lives matter, please. This is a safe space for women to be empowered. So let's be rest assured. Let's be very clear on that. Also, what Clara said. No. I gotta say it the right way. Clara said it. She said it right. Consent is a process. It's not something that goes. This is it. And also the whole thing of nonverbals. Consent can be very gray because, like I said, it's an ongoing process. So it's not something where boom, that's consent. Boom. The whole point of consent is never assume. That's just the whole point. Just don't assume. Ask. Keep on asking. And there's ways of asking. You don't have to just ask. There's ways of asking. And I'm like, men, don't act like y'all don't be asking damn questions. Oh, you like that? Is that okay? How did that feel? Come on. Like, we really gonna sit there, like, y'all really gonna act like these are not questions, and a woman could easily be like, yes, I like that. No, I don't like that. Ooh, that felt weird. Let's stop that. Oh, all right, what about this? Come on. That's like...
Not the voice, too.
But I'm just keeping it 100.
That's
Like,
real.
these things are
That's
very
real.
real, and those
Yeah.
are questions. So how does that kill the
That's
mood?
it. Yeah.
Y'all ask that shit all the time. Oh, you like it when I smack that? Yes. So come on, like, come on, let's be really real. Like,
this is real.
let's be really real, and that does not kill no damn mood, all right?
No.
So questions don't kill the mood. And to address the whole thing about a party,
Real quick, I would love for you to do that. So we're Instagram cuts us off after an hour.
cool.
It's an hour.
Okay.
Right, it's an hour.
Okay.
So we're gonna end it, and then we're gonna restart it again. All right. So
Okay.
we have about 30 minutes left with our panel. So please feel free to come back. Phenomenal conversation going on. I
Yeah.
love the rawness. I love the realness. This shit is great. So please make sure to tune in. I'm gonna end it and then restart it. Okay.